The river had almost taken her. She had been gathering herbs along its banks when the current, swollen from the storm, surged violently. One moment she was stepping carefully on wet rocks, and the next she was swept away. Water clawed at her arms and legs, dragging her under, the cold biting deep into her bones. She fought for breath, gasping and coughing, but the river seemed determined to claim her. Then, through the roar of the water, she saw him. Matthew was a lone rancher who lived on the edge of the valley, a man who spoke more to his horses and the wind than to people. Without hesitation, he plunged into the icy river, struggling against the current, slipping on slick stones, but never letting go of his purpose. He reached her just in time, wrapping an arm around her and pulling with every ounce of strength he had. Her body was limp with exhaustion, and he had to drag her the last few feet to the riverbank. She coughed violently, water spraying from her mouth, her long dark hair plastered to her face. He dropped to his knees beside her, shrugging off his coat and placing it over her shivering shoulders. "You're safe," he said, his voice low but steady. "Easy now. Breathe." She blinked at him, trying to understand if he was real. Her chest heaved, still recovering from the icy water, and her soaked buckskin dress clung tightly to her body. She shivered violently as the cold crept into her bones, and she wrapped her arms around herself. "My name is Iona," she said softly, her voice trembling. "The river tried to claim me today." "You won't let it," he replied, his eyes scanning the rushing water one last time before focusing back on her. "There's a cabin not far. We can get you warm." He offered his arm, steady and careful, and she took it, leaning lightly against him as they walked toward his small cabin. The rain pelted them, thunder growling overhead, but he never faltered, guiding her over the slick stones and through the mud. Every step felt like an eternity, yet finally, they reached the cabin. Inside, he quickly lit a fire. The flames licked the hearth, and the scent of burning pine filled the room, wrapping around them like a shield. Iona stood near the fire, shivering, her wet dress still clinging to her. She glanced at him, unsure whether to speak or remain silent, and finally, she asked quietly, "Will you stay if I undress?" The words struck him, not as seduction, but as a plea for warmth and safety. He flushed, quickly turning toward the wall, to the fire, anywhere but her. "I'll stay," he said firmly, "but I won't look. You have my word." The cabin fell silent except for the crackle of the fire and the storm outside. He could hear the soft rustle as she carefully removed her soaked clothing, then slipped into a blanket he handed her, wrapping herself tightly. He kept his gaze averted, feeling the weight of her vulnerability and the strange honor of being allowed to guard it. Once she was covered, he handed her a spare shirt. She pulled it over herself and nodded in thanks. "Thank you, Matthew," she whispered, "not just for the river." They talked quietly as the storm raged outside, sharing stories and comfort. Iona told him of her people, who camped beyond the hills, and of how she had been gathering herbs when the river had turned treacherous without warning. Matthew shared little, but his presence was steady, a quiet protection that allowed her to relax. When the storm finally passed, they stepped outside. The world smelled of rain and new beginnings. Matthew walked her back toward the trail that would lead to her camp. The morning air was crisp, and the sky a pale promise of day. "You gave me warmth when I had none," Iona said, pausing at the edge of the trees. "If our paths cross again, I will remember this." "So will I," Matthew replied, his voice low but certain. She smiled, a small bright thing in the grey morning, and turned toward the woods. Matthew stayed at the edge of the trail, listening to the distant river, no longer roaring but singing. He realized that sometimes rescue wasn't just saving someone from death, but sharing a moment where trust, humanity, and kindness could keep two souls alive. The memory of her lingered long after she had disappeared, a reminder that even in his lonely life, some connections were meant to leave lasting marks. If you want, I can also create 5 picture prompts for this story, showing each scene visually for illustration. Do you want me to do that?